The 2020s have been an amazing decade for horror and sci-fi movies, and 2026 is looking to continue that trend with a slate of upcoming films sure to leave you satisfied no matter what your favorite subgenre is. Welcome to the Cinema Cult. I'm your guide, CT. Today, we're getting into 25 upcoming horror and sci-fi movies coming out in 2026 that you need to know about. So I'm going to make my way through this list based off of the expected release dates of these movies. Just keep in mind, those dates are always subject to change at the whims of the studios. So starting with January, a month that's usually a dumping ground for movies that studios don't have a lot of faith in, but I think this January might buck that trend because there are a number of interesting looking releases kicking off this new year. I'm going to start with We Bury the Dead, coming out on January 2nd. After a catastrophic military disaster, the dead don't just rise, they hunt. And the military insists they're harmless and slow-moving, offering some hope to grieving families. But when Ava enters a quarantine zone searching for her missing husband, she uncovers the horrifying truth. The undead are growing more violent, more relentless, and more dangerous with every passing hour. We Bury the Dead is directed by Zach Hildrich, it stars Daisy Ridley, and I just think it's a bold move releasing a zombie movie not called 28 Years Later this January. This one's gonna be first to theaters, definitely has a different take on the zombie subgenre. We've got a man-made event here that looks to just be affecting a specific area, so I think that'll give this movie an opportunity to have maybe a more intimate feelings than some of these worldwide disaster type zombie movies. And I also definitely saw a pregnant looking zombie at one point, so I don't know why that's become a trend, but apparently it has, and it's going to continue this January. Moving on, we've got Primate. It's coming out on January 9th. Home from college, Lucy reunites with her family, including their rescued chimp, Ben, but Ben contracts rabies during a pool party and turns super aggressive. So now Lucy and friends have to barricade themselves in a pool and devise ways to survive the vicious chimp. So basically this looks like Cujo with a chimp. I'm on board for that. This one's directed by Johannes Roberts. And yeah, I think this is just a scary as hell idea. I think maybe they saw the chimp in Nope and said, hey, let's give it rabies and up this thing another level. I think there's a lot of opportunities for this movie to get crazy and campy. I think there'll be some insane chimp kills here. This just looks like it might be the first wild ride of 2026. Moving on to maybe the most anticipated movie early on in the year, we've got 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, coming out on January 16th. Fear is the new faith. Dr. Kelson finds himself in a shocking new relationship with consequences that could change the world as they know it. And Spike's encounter with Jimmy Crystal becomes a nightmare he can't escape. This 28 Years Later sequel was directed by Nia DaCosta. And actually, I gotta give 28 Years Later a rewatch because when I first saw it in theaters, my thoughts were that I wasn't sure how much I could enjoy this movie without the next chapter. So a lot of my ultimate enjoyment of 28 Years Later depends on how good The Bone Temple turns out to be. I just feel like that first entry was very much a chapter one of the story, so I want to see how this story continues with these crazy Jimmy characters. It also looks like we're going to get some backstory on the alpha zombie, so that should be interesting. And well, there's just a lot going on here. Hopefully not too much, but either way, I'm excited to see this one. Next up, I've got Night Patrol. This movie is going to see a limited theatrical release on January 16th. This is a horror crime thriller that supposedly blends gritty suspense with supernatural overtones. We see an LA cop here discovering a local task force is hiding a secret that puts the residents of his childhood neighborhood in serious danger. Night Patrol is directed by Ryan Prowse and stars Jermaine Fowler and Justin Long, and I'm just really into this evil vampire cops versus an entire neighborhood idea. This movie looks action-packed, like it's filled with plenty of gunfights and explosions. It also seems like Justin Long's going to be turned into one of these Night Patrol vampires, but ultimately will end up on the other side of this conflict before it's all over. And hopefully this is going to be released near to me because it is a limited release, but either way, since it's a Shudder production, I expect it will be on that streaming service at some point before the end of the year. Moving on, I've got Return to Silent Hill coming out on January 23rd. When James receives a mysterious letter from his lost love Mary, he's drawn to Silent Hill, a once familiar town now consumed by darkness. And as he searches for her, James faces monstrous creatures and unravels a terrifying truth that'll push him to the edge of his sanity. I think it's really cool that Return to Silent Hill is bringing back the original director, Christopher Gans, from the first silent film movie from 20 years ago. And this is our first video game adaptation of the year as well, so I'm excited for that. I know video game movies generally get a bad rap, but they're a huge guilty pleasure of mine, especially if I've never played the video game, which is the case here in Silent Hill because I've never owned a PlayStation. Anyway, I remember enjoying the first Silent Hill movie a lot. I've got to check it out again before I see this one, but it'll be interesting to see what this guy brings to the table 20 years later. My last film in January you've got to check out is Send Help. This one's coming out on January 30th. It sees two office colleagues and longtime rivals as the only survivors of a plane crash, and they end up stranded on a deserted island where old grievances and a battle of wills complicate their fight to stay alive. Send Help is directed by Sam Raimi, so I'm instantly interested in this one. It's got Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien as the two warring colleagues. This looks to be more of a thriller. I'm just really interested to see anything that Sam Raimi has to do. I also love movies with isolated settings, so this looks like it's going to be a real fun one for me. We've got this sort of mousy underling and her extremely overbearing boss, and they now have their roles flipped after the disaster. I also really enjoyed Triangle of Sadness, and this reminds me of that situation a little bit, so it'll be interesting to see if it explores some of the similar themes there. Okay, moving on to February. First up, I've got Whistle. This one comes out on February 6th. It's about a group of misfit high school students who stumble upon an ancient Aztec death whistle. And they find out when they blow the whistle, the terrifying sound it emits will invoke their future deaths to hunt them down. As the body count rises, the friends investigate the origins of the deadly artifact in a desperate effort to stop the horrifying chain of events that they've set in motion. This one was directed by Corin Hardy, and I'm getting big-time Final Destination vibes from this supernatural horror flick. It's absolutely a good thing, though. Now, I think it's going to have trouble hitting the heights of the Final Destination franchise, but I'm down with anything in that vein, and this does look like an entertaining take on death itself, stalking down a group of teens. I also saw Nick Frost in the trailer, and well, I always love seeing him in a movie too, so I'm excited for this one. Next up, I've got an international selection. This one's called Kraken, and also comes out on February 6th. Here we've got a marine biologist named Johan doing research on a fish farm in a rural community located by the fjord when she encounters several strange occurrences. Now, along with the brutal deaths of two local teenagers, all signs point to the deep fjord. Can there be more to the depths than the eye can see? Kraken's directed by Paul Oy, and it's a horror action science fiction film out of Norway. Now, personally, I'm excited to see this huge Kraken monster and what it can do. I'm a big fan of creature feature films in general. Again, this just looks like it could be a fun one. I want to see this Scandinavian take on the Kraken creature. Moving on from there, we've got a movie called Cold Storage. This one comes out on February 13th. When a mutating, highly contagious fungus escapes from a sealed facility, two young employees and a hardened bioterror operative must survive a chaotic night shift to keep humanity from extinction. This was directed by Johnny Campbell. It stars Georgina Campbell and Joe Carey and Liam Neeson. This again just looks like a great time, a real action horror comedy with an extremely likable cast. We got a contagious fungus which is definitely mutating the local wildlife. Looks like it might be causing some zombieism as well. So there's just a lot of potential for this movie to get extra wild with all of those ingredients. And I have a feeling this one's going to be one of my early year favorites. Moving on, I've got How to Make a Killing. This one comes out on February 20th. Disowned at birth by his obscenely wealthy family, blue-collar Beckett Redfellow is determined to reclaim his inheritance, no matter how many of his relatives he has to go through. Directed by John Patton Ford and starring Glenn Powell and Margaret Qualley, I dig the concept of this movie. I think it sounds like a fun time. I'm kind of always down for a good eat the rich style film. And I think a lot of whether or not this movie is going to work is going to hinge upon how well the comedy works. This is clearly a tongue-in-cheek thriller, and Glenn Powell is playing, I would say, an unlikely murderer here of billionaires. So it's certainly intriguing, and I think there's a lot of potential here, especially considering the cast involved. Moving on to something more serious, we've got Psycho Killer coming out on February 20th. Following the brutal murder of her husband, a Kansas Highway Patrol officer sets out on a journey to track down the perpetrator. As the hunt progresses, she comes to realize the man responsible is a sadistic serial killer, and the depth of his mental depravity and his sinister agenda is more twisted than anyone could have imagined. Psycho Killer is directed by Gavin Poloni and also stars Regina Campbell, but this one looks way more serious than the last one she was in. It was written by the same guy that wrote 7 and 8mm, so I don't think Psycho Killer is going to be holding back at all. It also looks like it's going to lean heavily into satanic and religious themes if you're into that sort of thing, which I definitely am, but a much more different tone than some of these other February releases might be a nice change of pace. And lastly, in February, we've got Scream 7 due to come out on February 27th. When a new ghost-faced killer emerges in the quiet town where Sidney Prescott has built a new life, her darkest fears are realized as her daughter becomes the next target. Determined to protect her family, Sidney must face the horrors of her past to put an end to the bloodshed once and for all. This one's directed by Kevin Williamson, and it brings back as many people as they could, it seems, from the previous entries of this franchise. I'm honestly not overly excited for Scream 7, but I feel like it had to be included on this list. For me, this franchise has run its course. It's kind of become what it was originally poking at. So I just hope this is a good entry in the franchise. My hopes just aren't super high. It seems like they're just trying to bring a lot of these cast members back in order to bring in the nostalgia factor and get more butts into the seats. The trailer didn't instill me with a lot of confidence either, so I'm just hoping I'm wrong with this one. Okay, moving on to March, I've got The Bride coming out on March 6th. Here we've got a lonely Frankenstein's monster traveling to 1930 Chicago, persuading a visionary scientist there to create him a companion. And when they resurrect a murdered young woman as the bride, the results go far beyond what either imagined. This one's directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal with Jessie Buckley as the bride and Christian Bale as the monster, and it just looks wonderfully stylish. I wasn't initially super excited for this one when I first heard about it, but when I saw the trailer, I am fully on board. A reimagining of Frankenstein's monster and his bride going on a Bonnie and Clyde style crime spree is a wild direction to take the Frankenstein story, so I'm pumped to see how that turns out and see what Maggie Gyllenhaal brings to the table for this one. It just looks really cool. Next up, I've got Project Hail Mary. That's hitting theaters on March 20th. Here, science teacher Raylan Grace wakes up on a spaceship light years from Earth with no recollection of who he is or how he got there. As his memory returns, he begins to uncover his mission. He's got to solve the riddle of the mysterious substance causing the sun to die out. He's got to call in all of his scientific knowledge and unorthodox ideas to save everything on Earth from extinction, but an unexpected friendship with an alien means he might not have to do all this alone. Project Hail Mary was directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller and stars Ryan Gosling in the lead role. Now, I haven't read the novel this movie's based on, but I'm excited for it anyways. This looks like it's going to be a full-on sci-fi adventure film where we got an unlikely hero and an alien teaming up, so in other words, there's no way I'm going to miss this movie. And it's also directed by that team of Lord and Miller, so I expect there's going to be quite a bit of comedy injected into this situation, even though it's a very serious situation, to keep the movie entertaining as it moves along. And sticking with the sci-fi, in March, we've got The Dog Stars, scheduled to be released on March 27th. After the world's population has been ravaged by a pandemic, a man lives a lonesome existence in a Colorado airplane hangar with his dog and a dour gunman he's befriended. And when a mysterious transmission comes through on the radio while he's flying, it sparks a hunt for the provenance of the sound. Now, I'm mostly interested in this one because it's directed by Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott doing a sci-fi film that's going to get me instantly excited, and the cast here looks great. We've got Jacob Elordi, Margaret Qualley, Josh Brolin, Guy Pearce, and Benedict Wong, all confirmed to be involved in this movie. Moving on to April, I'm starting with Mother Mary. This one doesn't have a confirmed release date yet, but it is supposed to come out sometime in April. Here we got long buried wounds rising to the surface when iconic pop star Mother Mary reunites with her estranged best friend and former costume designer Sam Anselm on the eve of her comeback performance. This one's directed by David Lowery. It stars Anne Hathaway and Michaela Cole, and it's been marketed as a psychological thriller. I'm mostly interested because I don't really know what's going on in this trailer. It's left me intrigued. I just want to know more about what is going on between these two women, and I'm really curious to see how supernatural this movie gets. Moving on from there, I've got Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, scheduled to be released on April 10th. Moments after surviving the ordeals of the first film, Grace discovers she's reached the next level of the nightmarish game, and this time, she's got her estranged sister Faith at her side. Now, Grace has one chance to survive, keep her sister alive, and claim the high seat of the council that controls the world. 4 rival families are going to be hunting her for the throne, and whoever wins rules it all. With the Radio Silence guys returning to direct this sequel, I think everyone's pretty much interested in this one. I don't know how you couldn't be, since Ready or Not was so much fun, and I'm pumped that they were able to figure out a way to do a sequel that seems to make sense in this universe. Now, when you got the addition of Catherine Newton, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and Elijah Wood to the cast, that's just adding icing to the cake, and I really expect a lot more of the same from the first movie, and really, how could you not want that? So I'm really excited for Ready or Not 2. Moving on, I've got a movie whose name isn't even confirmed. It's Lee Cronin's take on The Mummy. It's scheduled to come out on April 17th, but I don't think that's going to happen. Reportedly, this movie's being reworked and will not even be titled The Mummy anymore after Universal decided they were going to make another mummy film of their own with Brendan Fraser. Now, I was excited to see a non-Universal mummy film, but when all is said and done, this may end up being more of a supernatural possession film than a true mummy movie. I think the drama here just has me intrigued. All right, moving on to May, I've got Deep Water, scheduled to be released on May the 1st. Here, a group of international passengers on a flight from Los Angeles to Shanghai is forced to make an emergency landing in shark-infested waters. I'm interested in this one because it's directed by Renny Harlin. Now, his movies can be pretty hit or miss. I think The Strangers Chapter 1 was one of the worst horror movies I've seen in recent memory, but he's also the director of Deep Blue Sea, which is maybe my favorite shark movie this side of Jaws. So I'm excited to see him coming back to do another shark horror movie. That's literally all I need to get excited for this one. Next up in May, I've got Mortal Kombat 2. This one's scheduled to be released on May 8th. It's already been moved once, so let's hope they don't move it again. Here we've got the fan favorite champions, now joined by Johnny Cage himself, being pitted against one another in the ultimate no-holds-barred, gory battle to defeat the dark rule of Shao Kahn that threatens the very existence of the Earth realm and its defenders. The director of the first Mortal Kombat movie, Simon McQuoid, is returning for this one, and I said I was a sucker for video game movies, and I meant it. Mortal Kombat is no exception to that rule. I'm also glad they're bringing Johnny Cage in for this one. I think Carl Urban is going to be awesome in that role. He's absolutely going to kill it. I just love these Mortal Kombat movies going back to the 90s. They might be dumb, but they're good, dumb fun as far as I'm concerned, and I just love them. Next up, I've got I Love Boosters, scheduled to be released on May 22nd. I am super excited to see Boots Riley returning to direct this movie. I can't believe it's been almost 8 years since he did Sorry to Bother You. I thought that was one of the greatest things I'd ever seen at the time. Maybe it's because I had worked my fair share of shitty phone jobs when I was younger, or maybe it's just because it was just perfectly weird. Either way, I'm really excited to see him returning to the director's chair to bring us something new here, and I can't wait to see what he has in store. Moving on to a film that even less is known about, I've got The Dish, scheduled to be released on June 12th. Now, I'm excited for this one because it's Steven Spielberg doing a UFO story, apparently. Now, very little is known about this movie other than the fact that it's being written by David Koepp, who also wrote Jurassic Park and Mission Impossible. Some of the cast has been released as well, and there's some familiar names there. We got Emily Blunt, Colin Firth, Coleman Domingo, Wyatt Russell. Nobody knows what roles they're playing, but at the end of the day, This is Steven Spielberg doing a UFO movie, so if you're not excited for that, I don't know what's wrong with you. Moving on to a movie that's probably going to be very different than Spielberg's The Dish, I've got Scary Movie, also scheduled to be released on June the 12th. This is the Wayans brothers' big return to the Scary Movie franchise, and I can't wait. It's pretty wild that I'm more excited for the 6th entry into the Scary Movie franchise than I am for the 7th entry into the Scream franchise, but well, that's just where we're at. Now, the Wayans were heavily involved in the first 2 Scary Movie films, so I expect this one to be a return to form. I really enjoyed those. They came out when I was in high school, so it's going to be a lot of fun seeing a new take on this franchise decades later. Moving on to July, I've got Evil Dead Burn, scheduled to be released on July 24th. Of course, this is the latest entry in the Evil Dead franchise, but the details on this one are still under wraps. I'm excited because, well, it's another Evil Dead movie, and I don't need anything more than that, but we do have more than that. We've got the French director, Sebastian Vinicic, heading this one, and he's responsible for the 2023 spider horror film Infested, and that movie was full of tense moments. I loved watching that one, so I can't wait to see this French take on the Evil Dead franchise this summer. And I gotta finish up this list with a movie that's been taken off of the 2026 release schedule, but I have to imagine it's gonna come out at some point. It's called Soulmate. This one's directed by Kate Dolan and takes place in the Megan universe. Now, I don't know exactly why this one's been removed from the schedule. It was supposed to come out at the beginning of January, but we don't even have a trailer out yet. Again, I think this will see the light of day sometime in 2026, but it's probably going to go straight to streaming now. Either way, I was excited to see another entry into the Megan franchise, so whether it's in theaters or on streaming, I will be checking this one out whenever it rears its head. So there you have it, 25 horror and sci-fi movies coming out in 2026 that you really need to have on your watch list. And really, these movies are just the start. There's so much more coming out in 2026 that I'm excited for beyond these 25 movies. So if I missed your most anticipated upcoming genre film, make sure you call it out in the comments below because I want to make sure I see them all this year. And if you had a good time going through these movies, make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons to join the cult. Also, make sure you check out some of my favorite movie moments right here. That's it for today. I'm CT Reese. Thanks for hanging out with me and keep watching weird movies. I know I will.